All right. How you guys doing out there? It is 8 o'clock. Want to see who's here. Can you hear me? And what are you guys up to? Fanya? It looks like we have maybe about some other registered attendees. We got one other person. I believe that might be Dylan. But anyways, we're gonna get going here, and if those people show up, we do have looks like some other people kind of coming in here possibly. Um, I guess I'll just point out one thing is I know that we kind of like went into this price mode a couple weeks ago, and I think we're kind of like laying off of that again. So if there is anyone who's staying away because of the price, that should not be an issue. I believe that the Fiveable Plus is going to be something having to do with all replays and May cram sessions. So we kind of like want to get you guys hooked, and then you want to be with us for the cram sessions. But anyways, it's fine. I think that we'll make these very productive in the meantime. Um, kind of jump right into it today. Potentially sort of a short session, but I do want to talk about the open prompt every now and again. It's very open-ended, obviously, as the name suggests. Let me go over to our presentation and get this going here. Okay, so open prompt practice, and I'm trying to find ways of making this a little bit more interactive. Honestly, it's a little bit difficult. I feel like sometimes I'm just kind of talking and modeling it, but I'll do my best, kind of check in with you guys every now and again. What do you think? Do you want me to kind of discuss anything? If you ever have any questions, I'm going to switch back over from time to time just to check on you. And then, possibly as we get into sort of discussing the open prompt, because I do want us to practice this, I want us to think about the books that we're reading and think about how might we use that book to answer the question, the open prompt question that we have. So I want to kind of, first of all, just go over the AP exam in a nutshell. I always feel that it's good to do that it is a 2 hour, the free response question part of it after the multiple choice is a 2 hour session. The open prompt is actually just one of 3 essay questions and prompts. The first one being the poetry prompt, and that could be a 1 poem prompt. Actually, there were 2 poem prompts, and there were actually a lot of them the turn of the millennium, that the knots, if you will. We don't know if they're coming back. They haven't had one for a while, but we'll talk about that actually a little bit later this year. Question 2, the prose prompt, which is an excerpt from a novel or play, a very similar structured question. And then finally, the open prompt. And the open prompts, 1970 to the present, I've been keeping track of them on this Google Doc. And all the way up to 2018. We're going to be looking actually at the most recent ones. They're not totally representative of every single one you'll see, but we kind of did a survey the last time we talked about the open prompt, and I just wanted to look at the most recent ones and see what's kind of happening in those prompts. For the most part, they've been inside a pattern since the very beginning. And the way they describe it on the website is, the open prompt is an analysis that examines a specific concept, issue, or element in a work of literary merit selected by the student. And I think what I'd like to ask you right now and get a little bit of interaction here is what is that book that you have a sense of, you have a strong enough sense of, that you really think you are going to want to have that and you are going to want to use that when it comes to answering this question. So I'm going to flip over and you tell me What are some of the ones that you feel most comfortable with in terms of analyzing? Stefania, what do you say? Anyone else? What are some books that you think you'd feel comfortable choosing from at this point that you felt you had a very strong sense of? And anyone else who's here, by the way. Things Fall Apart. Okay, I remember you guys were reading that. All right. And so one of the main questions that we have with the open prompt is how does it contribute to meaning? What are some of the meanings there? So with Things Fall Apart, Stefania, what are some of the big themes or big ideas that or morals of the story, if you will? You know, usually literature doesn't have really nice, tidy morals, but you know, those kinds of ideas, those meanings, those messages that you think you could point to with Things Fall Apart. So, for example, I actually today, Martin Luther King Day for us, we went to see a screening of, okay, Sense Fitting and also Gender Roles. Very good. Yeah. Okay. Kind of identity too is definitely a question. Two worlds that are kind of colliding, two cultures that are colliding, and where do I fit in this new kind of economy, this new collision of cultures? Yeah. You know, I saw something very similar today. We watched the film version of The Hate You Give. And actually, I really think that that book, even though it's kind of a young adult book, I think you could potentially use it for this. And it's a very similar kind of message. There's a message about identity. There's a message of kind of double consciousness that she experiences coming from a predominantly African American neighborhood, going to a predominantly white school, and basically feeling like she doesn't fit in either place. So there is that sense of identity and kind of confused identity, and then she is able to kind of you know, get a sense of what that is for her and who she is going to be in the world, and what she's going to lend her voice to. So those are sort of, you should at the end of every book have a pretty good sense of some big ideas or themes, and you're going to see why that is so important. So Stefania, you're the only one who responded to me. Think of Things Fall Apart as we look at some of these open prompts that I've chosen for tonight. Would you be able to use Things Fall Apart for any of these questions? Okay, so back to the presentation. It applies to a wide range of texts. Some of the questions that have come down the pike over the years are types of characters. Okay, so, you know, a tragic hero or a minor character or a foil. Lots of different types of characters that you can, you know, kind of zero in on. And a lot of times they're not necessarily the main character. They could be you know, more of an antagonistic character or a foil, as I said. Character motivations. Why do they do what they do? Is kind of a big question. What is the underlying motivation? A lot of times there are some meanings there. One of the things that I would say with this, and Okonkwo is a perfect example of this, is we tend to write off the characters. Oh, I would never do that. And Okonkwo's downfall is caused by this, that, and the other thing. And we're so good at saying why they fell. But what was it that they endeavored? What was their motivation? And usually we should have a deep appreciation of that. These characters are not failures. They're usually endeavoring something that is better than what we would endeavor. You know, they're bolder, they're braver, they're more courageous. Settings, you know, so we've had kind of a collision of settings, you know, countryside versus city, interior settings. Usually authors choose the setting for a purpose. Okay, even if they have a general geographical area in mind, you know, they are taking these characters through various settings that definitely have a certain mood to them and that actually may advance some of the meanings that the author has. Scenes, so specific scenes like a death scene or kind of a minor scene, maybe a scene that, like you didn't even pay attention to, a casual reader wouldn't even notice, like when they're waiting around for something. But usually an author doesn't take any scenes off. They use those scenes to demonstrate something and to really dramatize something. Literary devices. So one that I remember fairly recently was symbolism. They just asked, choose a symbol from a literary work. And I know that there are plenty of symbols in Things Fall Apart, things that represent something, literally, but also something figuratively beyond that. Moving on, themes. Obviously, they'll ask you to talk about themes. In that case, obviously, you can't point to a theme as being the meaning, but what is the author's message about that theme? So gender issues, are we like thumbs up to the status quo with regard to that? Or do we have more of a progressive message about that theme of gender issues? And again, this is kind of an overarching thing. A lot of times they zero in on kind of a seemingly small thing, like a minor character, like a foil, like a, kind of seemingly meaningless scene. And a lot of times an author will use that as a microcosm for larger things that are happening on a more macro level. Okay, so these are the steps that I do whenever I hit an open prompt. So the first thing is to clarify what the prompt is asking of you, underlining relevant words. It kind of amazes me how often during the year students just like glance at the prompt when the prompt is really almost, it needs to be your guide in really approaching your essay. So spending some quality time with the prompt, underlining relevant words and passages, and getting a sense of the different things they want you to talk about. Make sure you're talking about the right thing. Second, of course, identify a work of recognized literary merit that can be used to answer the prompt. Again, this isn't very well stipulated exactly what they mean by this, but the canon, basically Things Fall Apart would definitely fall into this more modern canon. As we get into young adult fiction, it's a little touchy, and I would be somewhat hesitant to use anything young adult like Hunger Games, Harry Potter. I would not recommend any of those. The Hate You Give to me resonates at a deeper level where I really do think that it has some aspects of, a book that really stands up to a certain amount of analysis. So it's not just kind of a plot driven thing where we're going episode after episode after episode. It really is, some deeper meanings and some things that we can dig into. Third step is to create a level 2 outline. Level 2 for me means the thesis, and that thesis should mirror the prompt. It doesn't have to have all the wording in it, but it should be pretty close to the prompt. And divide the task into 3 paragraph topics that support the thesis. So a lot of times you get those paragraph topics from the prompt itself. Now, write your essay, including as many specifics as possible. You should have topical topic sentences. None of these should be used to summarize. You're not going to have, okay, here's my summary paragraph. This is what happened in the book. Now I'm getting into my analysis. No, each of your paragraphs is going to be analysis. Now people get confused. Well, I have to give information about the book. Right. Yes, but always in service of whatever topic you're pursuing. And I think you'll see what I mean by that as we move on. So let's look at a couple of these. So 2015, I'm going to do the most recent 4 of these. Actually, let me just switch over really quick. And you know what? I'm going to go through these. And then what I'd like everyone to do, if there's more people here, I'd like you to think about these 4 prompts that I'm going to share. And you tell me which of them you think you'd be able to do most easily using that book you have in mind. And hopefully you have multiple books in mind when you get to the point where we're at the test. So 2015 was Cruelty. So in literary works, cruelty often functions as a crucial motivation or a major social or political factor. Select a novel, play, epic poem in which acts of cruelty are important to the theme. Then write a well-developed essay analyzing how cruelty functions in the work as a whole and what cruelty reveals about the perpetrator and or victim. All right, let's underline this. So first thing that I saw, cruelty often functions as a crucial motivation or major social or political factor. So I'm getting a sense of where that cruelty is happening potentially. It does seem to be, resonating at a higher level than just sort of like violence for the sake of violence, gratuitous violence. It does seem to have cruelty with a point. Moving a little bit further down, write a well-developed essay analyzing how cruelty functions in the work as a whole. So how did it play out? How did cruelty play a role? And then lastly, what cruelty reveals about the perpetrator and or victim. Now, I see three topics right there personally. I see a topic up here of talking a little bit about, what was it? I'm thinking Antigone. Antigone is really coming to my mind, that there was a real political use of cruelty. We need to send a message here. Okay, so that's one of the things that's popping into my mind, and I actually just might sketch that out. That's not summarizing. It's very topical. I'm going to be talking about, how this was kind of a political use of cruelty. How does it function in the work as a whole? So I may watch how that kind of unfolded. Some of the equivocation, I think, that happens with it, like, are we going to bring down the full weight of the law or are we not? Different ways that played out. And then what does it reveal about the perpetrator and or victim? And actually, I think I might be able to come up with something thinking about Antigone for each of those people. Actually, this could be broken into two paragraphs, something about the perpetrator and the victim. So do you see what I did there a little bit? I'm kind of already outlining in my mind how I might break this up into topics, not summary and then analysis. Okay, 2016, deception. Many works of literature contain a character who intentionally deceives others. The character's dishonesty may be intended either to help or to hurt. Let's see what we have so far. So, character who intentionally deceives others. So, it's a single character. I've seen this one done where people are like spreading it out among a bunch of people, and that's not what they're asking. To help or to hurt. So that's kind of helping me a little bit, get some context here. Moving on, such a character, for example, may choose to mislead others for personal safety, to spare someone's feelings, or to carry out a crime. Choose a novel or play in which a character deceives others. Then, in a well-written essay, analyze the motives for that character's deception and discuss how the deception contributes to the meaning of the work as a whole. So I see another topic there. First of all, analyze the motive for that character's deception. And this is one you see a lot, how it contributes to the meaning of the work as a whole. If you were with me the first time and the second time we talked about the open prompt, that is a core question that shows up in most of the prompts. And that's where you talk about that theme, that big idea, that meaning or message. Okay, so deception, would that be a good one for your book? Mysterious origins. Select a novel, play, or epic poem that features a character whose origins are unusual or mysterious. Okay, so that's the character that I'm looking for. Got a couple ones that come to mind. Unusual or mysterious really opens it up to a lot. I'm actually thinking, the hate you give. I mean, this girl who goes to this white school has an unusual origin. She doesn't come from this neighborhood. Mysterious, I'm thinking more kind of maybe Oedipus, the king. He had a mysterious origin. Then write an essay in which you analyze how these origins shape the character. Okay, so That seems to be a topic. That character's relationships. Now, maybe that's one topic, big overarching topic, or maybe that's actually two topics, and how the origins contribute to the meaning of the work as a whole. And again, that is some sort of big question or idea or theme. And, thinking about The Hate You Give, I'm thinking, this question of identity, this question of double consciousness, and striking that balance, that difficult balance of living in two worlds, sort of almost being a master of both worlds. 2018, Gift. Many works of literature feature characters who have been given a literal or figurative gift. The gift may be an object, or it may be a quality such as uncommon beauty, significant social position, greater mental or imaginative faculties, or extraordinary physical powers. Yet this gift is often a burden or a handicap. I apologize, by the way. My daughter is vacuuming and singing at the top of her lungs right outside my door. This gift is also a burden or a handicap. So that looks like another topic. So gift is a good thing, but a burden or a handicap is not. Okay, select a character from a novel, play, or epic, or play that has been given a gift that is both an advantage and a problem. Then write a well-developed essay analyzing the complex nature of the gift and how the gift contributes to the meaning of the work as a whole. Okay, so a couple questions. Those were the most recent four. What work of literature, or what prompt do you think you could use with that work of literature that you had in mind? And tell me if you can hear my daughter singing at the top of her lungs. Any ideas over here? Still there? Which of those prompts look good? Which of those prompts do you think you could use? So the first one was Cruelty, 2015. 2016 was Deception. 2017 was, I'm forgetting it. 2017 was Unusual Origins. And then 2018 was A Gift. Any ideas there? Don't know how many people are actually here anymore. Jane Eyre for the prompt with Deception. Okay. Yeah. Now, what do you think her purposes for deception were there? Do you have a sense of that? Was that to do harm, to kind of keep herself safe, to postpone something? What do you think her purposes were there? Wait time is so weird online. You still there? Well, the deception was definitely seen in marriage between her husband. He hid his previous marriage in his disguise as Gypsy. Okay. Okay. And you think that okay, so your daughter should be on the voice. Thank you. I'll tell her that. She's got a very strong voice, and she's been using it a lot recently. Thank you. Yeah. So what do you think was one of the larger messages there? So that's the reason, that's the way it functioned. Now it's always going to lead us to this question, Stefania, of like, so what? basically. How does it contribute to the larger meaning in the text? Is there a larger theme? Is there a larger idea that this helps to dramatize or illuminate or contribute to in any way? Any ideas there? I know that's a big question. I'm kind of putting you on the spot there. But, I think there are some themes that come to mind. Do you think that some of those themes kind of get illuminated by that deception? Helping develop their okay. So that I think that's still in this kind of second level of like, how is it functioning? I think that that's there. I think one thing though, thematically, and so Jane Eyre is part of kind of a genre called parody of manners, where it's kind of talking about that time period. It is a critique in some ways of the gender roles and some of the societal roles and expectations of that time period. I'm just kind of spitballing here. I think that it kind of reveals that kind of false society that they live in, and the courage and really the drama of them coming clean with one another and breaking out of that really in some ways reflects on a society that puts people in these kind of impossible situations, puts people in situations where they basically need to suppress, aspects of their identity. It's funny, we're talking a lot about identity, but why do we need to be deceitful with one another? Yes, it says something about the characters, but I think even more so it says something about the larger society in which they lived. I think that that's getting into this question of a larger message that we might find in that novel. Does that make sense? I just want to, before we move on, does that make sense that that's kind of the thing that we're getting to that point where we want to understand how it functions, but at the same time, we want to see sort of the larger message, and a theme is going to be that thing that is sort of like about life and human nature. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. Let's go back, and I'll kind of go through the remaining steps rather quickly. So what you'll see in the open prompt is like this. This is 2018, and you can see this is the gift one. And then look down below. Do you see anything that you recognize there? Let's see. Oh, I saw Dylan mentioned Frankenstein. Let's see, any other ones there? Did he mention picture? No, he meant a portrait of an artist as a young man. Okay, things fall apart. Okay, cool. So I wonder what that gift was. Any sense? I mean, it may be his greatness, his his strength, his power, his masculinity actually becomes kind of a burden or a handicap. Something that prospered him in the previous kind of culture and society is now a liability. Now, the main thing that I want to say here is if you don't see anything or you don't feel comfortable with any of this, that is fine. Choose another work of comparable literary merit. Okay, and then notice this, do not merely summarize the plot. Okay, so I guess we are, what we're going to do here is I just want to kind of show you, I'm going to do this right off the dome right now. And which of these do you want to see? So let me just go through them really quick, and I'll just kind of show you my thinking. I'm going to do this right off the cuff. And I'll probably only do one at this point, since we're kind of running short on time. But 2015, the Cruelty one, 2016, The Deception won. 2017, Mysterious Origins won. 2018, Gift. So, Stefania, you're the only one here. Okay, Raisin in the Sun. Okay, another one that you know. Would you like me to do any ones of these in particular? I think you're the only voice, so you can make the choice. So 2015, Cruelty. 2016, yeah, Cruelty. Let's do Cruelty. Okay. So let's look at that one again. I believe that was 2015. In literary works, cruelty often functions as a crucial motivation or major social or political factor. Select a novel, play, or epic poem in which acts of cruelty are important to the theme. Then write a well-developed essay analyzing how cruelty functions in the work as a whole and what cruelty reveals about the perpetrator and or victim. Okay, so I guess one thing that I almost want to use the hate you give, but I'm kind of borderline here. I think I'm going to go back with something that I'm a little bit more familiar with. I think I'm thinking there are acts of cruelty that happen in Antigone. There are acts of cruelty that I think definitely happen in Things Fall Apart. There are acts of cruelty that happen in what was the one I was thinking? Heart of Darkness. So let's try. Let me try Heart of Darkness, and then maybe we can actually talk about this a little bit with Things Fall Apart as well. I'm going to actually try to steal a couple of the as much of this wording as I possibly can. I'm going to say, let me get in here. I'm going to go with Antigone. Antigone, cruelty plays an important political role. Now, I actually kind of am stealing a couple words, if you remember, from the prompt itself. Let me go back there again and just kind of see if I can steal a couple more things. I'm going to go with this kind of second part here where as Creon, who is kind of the main character, uses cruelty to punish various characters for crimes against the state. Okay. Now I want to go back there one more time, make sure I'm getting all the different aspects. So I first of all mentioned that first aspect. Second of all, I took that second one. Third of all, what does that reveal about the perpetrator and or victim, and also kind of how it functions in the work as a whole? I think that I'm going to say this cruelty. Cruelty, so hard to say. Cruelty seems to contribute to a theme of democracy versus tyranny. Okay, that's a pretty healthy size thesis, so I'm not going to go any further than that. I think you can go to, 2 sentences, but hopefully you can see there that I've gotten all the different aspects. I really do need to get all the different aspects of the prompt in there. So first of all, I said kind of what type of cruelty we're talking about. Second of all, how does it function or how is it used? And then third of all, how does it contribute to any sort of larger message? Okay, I'm going to go here and just kind of elaborate on all these. So I think this first one was, I need to do this first kind of aspect up here. Cruelty plays, or let's say has a purpose in the play, or is used, yeah, is used for a political purpose, is used. Okay, and that will actually, there will be some summary in that, but it's all going to be about cruelty. So this is a pretty important distinction that, you know, it's not to say you're not going to summarize certain aspects of the story. I'm going to talk about how Creon, you know, the town of Thebes is attacked by Polynices, and Polynices and Eteocles kill each other at the gates. These brothers kill each other at the gates of the city, and the cruelty is that Creon leaves the body unburied. He gives Eteocles, who defended the city, an honorable burial. He gives Polynices this dishonorable fate, which is actually horrible in ancient times. It's a very cruel death. And then I want to also go on to, as Antigone, the sister, buries Polynices. So she actually kind of scatters some dust on him, which is sufficient for giving him a ritual burial. He condemns her to death. Okay, so second thing that I think I need to talk about a little bit here is I'm kind of moving into this and reveal something, reveal traits about Creon as leader. That's what I'm going to do, because that was actually part of the prompt. So this cruelty and its results seem to illustrate the need for listening to the people. Okay. And then lastly, I'm going to talk about, finally, the fate suffered by Creon for his cruelty, because basically his whole family dies in the end. Reveals how tyranny, while it thinks it protects itself, actually brings its own destruction. Okay, that wasn't brilliant, I have to admit, but hopefully you get the idea of sort of what I'm doing there. Let me switch over and just see what you thought of that. What do you think? Do you think you could do that with, what would you say if you had to develop that one with things fall apart? What would the acts of cruelty be that you would point to and things fall apart? All right, I'm not sure you're here anymore. If you are, go ahead and answer. Okay. I'm going to pop back in for a second when you get done. I'm going to go to the end here and just pop down to a couple other points that I would make about this prompt. Let's get this started again. A couple other points. Make sure that your thesis statement always mirrors the prompt. You should use this as a table of contents for your body paragraph. Start each body paragraph with a clear topic sentence. Don't say in the beginning or in the middle or, what at the beginning of the book or anything like that. It really should be topical. And then use as many specifics as possible from the book. Scorers don't expect you to remember direct quotes, but the more specific, the better. Use transitions, smoothly incorporate quotes, vary sentence structure, choose precise words, avoid passive voice. Whenever you can sound kind of academic and thoughtful and well-versed and have a large vocabulary, all that is pretty good, actually. And there are things on the scoring guide that talk about that. If time permits, bulk up your introduction and conclusion, but never sacrifice a body paragraph or an introduction or conclusion. A thesis and restated thesis is fine. And reread the prompt. Did you address all the aspects? Okay, you really should be able to address all the things that you underlined in the prompt. Write everything in the present tense. So everything happens in this present unless there's kind of a back part of the story, kind of flashbacks where you need to kind of indicate, different time periods in which things are happening. Okay, we would outline a 5-paragraph essay. Again, 2 ways of doing this, 2 aspects and then the meaning, kind of this overall thematic meaning, or 3 aspects kind of discussing the meaning as you go. Just discussing that in each of the paragraphs. What does that illuminate? Okay. If you're interested in what people wrote, here are some of the responses from each of those years from actual students, what they decided to write. And I'll actually end up just posting this in the stream as well. You can check these out. But these are 3 responses for each of the prompts. Oh, that's okay. The masculinity overshadows the compassion that he has for his son. His cruelty ultimately leads to his downfall. No, that's okay. No, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, and there are also some cruel aspects of his culture. I mean, they it's been a little while, but I think they kill twins, and there are some twins in the family. So there are some aspects of cruelty that are part of the culture. I think that definitely just supports that. Now, on the other hand, is there any cruelty that's coming in from the outside? In some ways, is he a victim of a certain kind of cruelty? So there is this collision of cultures. I don't know that we necessarily would see, a heroic story about Okonkwo becoming Christian and just kind of becoming a nice guy. I don't know if that would have necessarily been the best ending for Okonkwo. I think it's someone who's kind of dealing with this collision of cultures, the best he can. And actually, in some ways, holding on to those traditions is somewhat praiseworthy and not something that everyone does. So anyways, I like the idea that it leads to his downfall. I think that makes sense. But I think it also dramatizes something about just the impact of colonialism, and just the complexity and, the fallout, the aftermath of colonialism, the complex legacy of colonialism, things along that line. I think there are some definite messages about that as well. Okay, well, that's all I got. Let me see if I can get these posted. Here are some of the ones that were done over the years. You can check those out. I'm not sure if these are going to turn into links, but they are links. You can just select those and go to those different ones. If you're interested in cruelty, you can check that out. Check out all the other ones if you're interested. And that's all I got for this week. So thank you very much. And look forward to having you back next week.